I believe that a lot of people watching videos like this probably are good candidates for retiring sooner rather than later. But you know what? Not everybody's a good candidate. And so today I want to share with you 7 traits that I think make it really hard in order to be able to retire early. Okay, let's jump in with the first one. Let's go for a walk. And the first one is if you have a lot of debt. You know, debt is an unkind master. And there's what I call in previous videos, constructive debt and destructive debt. And what I mean by destructive debt is debt that's enabling consumerism and is enabling rapidly depreciating assets. So credit card debt, right? And buying things that you don't need really on an impulse, and over time that catches up with you. So it becomes really difficult to retire if you've got meaningful debt in your life that's at an interest rate in the 20% range, right? I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. And then there is constructive debt. And what I mean by constructive debt is debt like a mortgage or for a work vehicle that you're using. Those are constructive assets that are building you. They're long-lived assets. They enable you to live the life that you want to have, but they still become a master to you. And it makes it more difficult to retire. So when folks have a lot of debt, when they don't have a plan to pay off that debt, it makes it more difficult for them to retire, and they're less likely to be able to retire early. So if that's you, come up with a game plan and do what you can to pay off that debt. First, the high interest debt, but even things like mortgages. Now, there's an asterisk next to that in today's world because mortgage rates have been so low for so long. And if you have a super low mortgage, you may not want to pay that off, but you want to have the assets where you could pay it off if you wanted to. Okay, the second one is, I think as people get ready to retire, they have to have a good understanding of their finances. They have to understand the cash that's coming into their family and the cash that their family is spending. And having a good feel for that is really important, because how do you know you have enough to retire if you don't have an idea of what you're spending now, and you don't have an idea of how much you're going to be spending in retirement? So if that's you, do what you can, put together a budget, try to live on it. I'm not a huge fan of budgets. That said, I think you want to have a pretty good feel of how much money you're going to be spending on retirement and what's realistic. And so I think it's helpful for people to at least try to live off of that retirement budget for at least a little bit of time, preferably 6 months. A year is better. If you think, okay, my spouse and I, or if you're unmarried, you and your partner, whatever the case might be, we're going to live on $75,000 a year. What does that feel like? And can you really do it? Because you're taking these cash flow numbers and you're extrapolating them for many years. So they're really important numbers to understand. So that's the second one. If you don't like doing budgets, I said I don't like doing budgets, but I do have a pretty good feel of about how much money my family can save a month, and then how much money my family needs to live off of. But I don't kind of categorize it into a lot of detail, right? It's like eating healthy. You know when you're eating healthy and you know when you're not. And every now and then it's good to just double check that and make sure you are eating healthy. Same thing with budgeting. I don't do it all the time, but I do look at the numbers occasionally just to make sure we're on track. And then ultimately, at least for me, it's how much am I saving? Okay, the third trait that I think is a warning sign that maybe you're not quite ready to retire yet. And remember, I'm the guy that's a fan of retiring as soon as you can. So these are not judgments. These are just things to put on your radar screen. But the second one is if you don't have a financial plan. You're about to make a big decision. You're about to make a big leap, a big transition in your life. And you want to have the confidence that says, I have a high likelihood of this plan working. But if you're just winging it and you don't have a plan, one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to retire and you're going to be scrimping pennies when you don't need to, and I call that sacrificing unnecessarily, or you're going to be putting your future financial security at risk and not even know it because you're spending too much money, right? So you want to have a plan. You want to make sure that that plan is inclusive of the big things that are going to drive whether you succeed or don't succeed financially. So I think it makes sense to work with a fee-only financial advisor to do that. None of what I'm sharing today is financial advice. I just want to put these things on your radar screen for you to be thinking about. And I think most of us can benefit quite a bit by working with somebody that's done hundreds, if not thousands, of these plans for other people. Okay, the next one is thinking about your investments. And if you're somebody that is investing emotionally, you know, your friend tells you about a stock. Oh, the stock is up I've made 400% on this stock in the last 12 months. Well, you know what? You know, that ride is probably over. You're likely going to get into that position right about the time it's ready to tank, right? So if you're investing emotionally, when things go up, you're like, oh, I want to jump in on this. And when it drops by 30, 40, 50%, you know, you want to run away from that. You want to sell that. That can get really expensive really quickly. And I think you're much better off working with somebody that, again, is doing this full time. It's not that you can't manage your own money, but think about it. You know, if this is not something you've been spending your life doing, unfortunately, a lot of these lessons that you learn in investing, unfortunately, many of them come from making mistakes. And wouldn't you rather work with somebody that's made these mistakes in the past and has that behind them? Because boy, a 10% mistake as you get close to retiring, and a 10% mistake is easy to make. You know, a 10% mistake on a $500,000 portfolio is $50,000. On $1 million portfolio is $100,000. That's real money. So, you know, be careful about the emotional aspects of investing and try to have discipline in there and think about hiring somebody to help you with that. Okay, number 5 is if you're under 65 and you don't have health care insurance, you need to think about, before you retire, before you leave your job, you know, what are you going to do for health care insurance? And in the United States, that's not one of the easiest things to do. There are solutions, but I suggest that you work with somebody to figure out what those solutions are for you before you make the big leap. Okay, number 6 is if you have the attitude that more is better. You know, more is not always better, right? Warren Buffett has more money than any of us are going to have, likely. I don't know who's all watching. Elon Musk, if you're watching, hello. But, you know, Warren Buffett would trade all of that money that he has with somebody that has another 40 years to live. Because, you know, Warren, you know, hopefully he's got a couple decades left to live, but the odds would say he's got less than a decade. So more money is not necessarily optimizing on life. More money is just more money. What we all need is more time, but we can't make more time. So more money is not always better. So if you're still struggling with that, you know, working one more year, you're always going to have more money. And you know what? If you work to 70 or 80, you're really going to have a lot of money. But it won't do you much good back then. So more money is not always better. And then time. You know, we talked about time, but, you know, time's our most valuable asset. But it's a double-edged sword. You know, when you're in your retirement, you're going to have a lot more free time than you have now. So not only do I want you to have a financial plan, but I want you to have a time plan, just an idea of, you know, these are the things that I'm interested in. These are the things that I would probably do with my time. And related to this is not just the time, not just the money, but there are other assets that are must-haves in retirement. And that's what this video over here is about. The 4 must-have investments in retirement. I hope you enjoy that video, and thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.